staying firm. He's backing the military. He's declared martial law. He's here to stay. I think the real question is, how long will he be here? The Russians, according to U.S. intelligence, do have a list of detain or kill Ukrainian politicians, and certainly you'd have to figure Zelensky would be on the top of Vladimir Putin's list.
Yeah, and lastly, Steve, I just want to know, have you heard of any, while we've been on the air, the 3 hours we've been on the air, have you heard of any kind of fighting between Ukrainian and Russian forces coming from the eastern part of the country or any other place that you know of in that time?
There's certainly been heavy shelling from the Russian side in the east, Russian forces crossing into Ukraine from Crimea and also from the north. So fighting on three fronts and movement closer to the capital on three fronts as well, Trace.
Steve Harrigan, live for us in Ukraine. Back to you as the news breaks. Thank you, Steve. Joining us now is Jonathan Rath-Hoffman, former Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs during the Trump administration, and Brett Bruen, former Director of Global Engagement in the Obama White House. Brett, we got to talk about this going forward. You see the traffic coming out of Kyiv, and there apparently was no plan. You wonder what the plan was, what the thoughts were, and what they were hoping or hoping against in the days that led up to this. But there doesn't appear to be a solid plan on how to get people that want to leave Ukraine outside the borders.
Well, look, I think first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that the Ukrainians, by and large, have been incredibly courageous in the face of unimaginable threats. And that, I think, is the real story here. President Zelensky, first and foremost, really providing his countrymen the example, and for that matter, the West, an example of how you stand up to President Putin. So, yes, certainly people are scared after having seen the attacks overnight. And I think it isn't surprising that you see folks heading into their cars, heading to the West. And obviously, that is playing out right now on the streets of Kiev and elsewhere. But let's not lose sight of the fact that Ukrainians have demonstrated an incredible resolve and resilience. Yeah.
Jonathan, you want to add to that?
No, I agree with Brett on the fact that the Ukrainian people have shown a great deal of resolve in this. We've expected that the intelligence community has expected and has shared publicly multiple times over the last few weeks what we believe the intentions of the Russians were. And as a result, I think you have people who are somewhat prepared for what has transpired over the last few hours. And the interesting thing will be is people move from the cities and move toward Poland or try to evacuate, how orderly is that? How are they received? And whether they're able to do so safely. So we'll be seeing that in the coming days and seeing what the international community does to assist. So by all indications, NATO, Poland, the rest of the European community seems intending to help the Ukrainian people as they become displaced. But that'll be one of the additional heartaches that we're going to see in the next few days.
Brett, what do you make of the Ukrainian President Zelensky asking for, the airspace over Ukraine to be shut down for the aggressor?
Well, he can certainly ask. I think it is unlikely that the U.S. or other countries are going to take that step. Nonetheless, it is important that President Zelensky is pressuring the U.S. and NATO allies to do more, because even if we are not going to enforce a no-fly zone, we're not going to get into direct combat with Russian troops, there is a lot that we can be doing from a logistical standpoint, from an intelligence standpoint, and from certainly providing more arms to the Ukrainians. They're going to need them. And I think it is important for us, as we watch these first images out of Ukraine, to look at hard what more can we do to help the Ukrainians that are trying to hold the line.
But I would say, Jonathan, maybe you disagree. There's probably very little chance of a no-fly zone being enforced by the United States or NATO.
Well, I think all eyes are going to be on President Biden tomorrow when he gives his remarks at noon. He's indicated that there will be, I think you've had some reporting that's indicated there will be a package of sanctions that he'll be introducing, as well as what the European community has indicated that they'll be introducing. I don't foresee tomorrow the president announcing any type of military action that would involve either overt or covert forces or aircraft enforcing a no-fly zone. I don't think that the possibility of U.S. aircraft going head-to-head with Russian aircraft over the skies of Europe is a place that the president wants to be. And in his defense, to some extent on that, I don't think the American people are there yet. I think that's one of the issues that we've seen with this is there's been a lack of leadership to prepare and talk to the American people about what this actually means. This is not a conflict that's only about Ukraine. This is a conflict that is about destabilizing the 80-year-old post-World War II global economic security framework that has led to prosperity for billions of people. And the president would be well served to spend some time tomorrow talking about that, not just the context of Ukraine, which is a humanitarian crisis right now and is an unjust infringement on their sovereignty. But what this means for the world in a larger context is that Putin believes that there is no world order, that it is might makes right. And you're going to see the Chinese look at this as well. And they're very fond of that view as well in the Asia-Pacific realm. So right now, the American people haven't been informed of that. They haven't been led on what that means to them. And I think you could see the president talk to that in a great extent tomorrow and be well served to do so. Yeah,
and we said it earlier, the President Xi is looking at Taiwan and looking at this thinking, I wonder what. But my last question to you, Brett, would be, the sanctions will be announced tomorrow. They could be severe. They could be very harsh. And then what? What happens then? What's the next move that President Biden makes, that the EU makes? What happens then?
Well, and I think that's an important point, Trace, because what we didn't see in the White House statement this evening was any call for Russia to cease and desist. I think after we impose these severe sanctions, we need a plan for how we are going to ratchet up the pressure, how we are going to push Putin ultimately back and hopefully out of Ukraine. Because if not, and we've heard it from Putin earlier this week, he has designs on other parts of Europe, and that will be deeply destabilizing for not only our allies, but potentially the United States as well.
I'll give you the last word on this, Jonathan.
I'm looking forward to seeing what the president has to say tomorrow. I think this will clearly be the most important speech of his 18 months in office, and to see how he handles it and what sanctions he proposes. I don't know, and I hope they're not planning on holding any back. I've seen some reporting indicating that is the case. If there is a time for sanctions, it's now. If there's a time for action, it's now. What we don't want is for Putin to take additional steps. It would have been easier to sanction him harshly 3 days ago before he came into Ukraine. It would be easier to sanction him yesterday than it was today. And waiting longer is not going to make this easier.
Jonathan Rath-Hoffman, Brett Bruen, thank you both, gentlemen. We appreciate it. There you see live pictures. The war, Russia and Ukraine, is on. You have thousands, maybe millions of people trying to get out of Kyiv, trying to get out of the country. And right now they are stuck in traffic as the war goes on. The sanctions by President Biden will be announced tomorrow, and the European Union. What's next? Continuing coverage of the crisis and the war on Fox News Channel. I'm Trace Gallagher in Los Angeles.
War is on in Europe as Ukrainians wake up to air raid sirens, explosions, and gunfire. Russian tanks entering the country from all sides as President Putin warns the West to stay out of his way or face, quote, consequences you have never had before in your history.
People on the ground in Ukraine's capital city crowding highways to a complete stop as they desperately rush to evacuate. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Thursday morning. I'm Carly Shimkus.
And I'm Todd Pyro. We are following this breaking news on all fronts. Griff Jenkins live in Washington, where President Biden is set to speak this morning. Lucas Tomlinson live on the ground in Lviv, Ukraine, where embassy staff were just evacuated.
But first, we turn to Steve Harrigan, who is live in Kiev. Steve, what are you seeing?
Carly, it's really what are you hearing so far this morning? A lot of really bad sounds. From about an hour before dawn here, we heard explosions off to the southwest, 8 or 10 at a time. And then about an hour ago behind me, behind those clouds, it sounded like thunder, more explosions. Then we heard air raid sirens. We've heard jets overhead. We've heard helicopters overhead. Those sounds are enough to scare people here in Kyiv enough to make them flee. There was a lot of denial about the possibility that this could be a widespread Russian invasion, that the Russians would attack their neighbors, their brethren here in Ukraine. Well, they are attacking and attacking in full force. So now, at the last minute, after the bombs have already begun to fall, people are fleeing. They're getting in their cars with their children, with their families, with their pets, throwing everything in the car and trying to get out of town. They are all heading west in the direction towards Poland. So a real sense of fear here that speaks to two things, I think. One, that people didn't imagine that this could happen. They didn't imagine that Vladimir Putin would attack Ukraine and would attack the capital here of Kyiv. And two, poor preparation by the government not preparing its people for this possibility, which is now a reality. So a desperate situation, people stuck on the highway, afraid and trying to get away. Carly?
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. The images that we're seeing today, that we're seeing on the screen right now, of just a traffic standstill as people flee west are pretty stunning, because the sentiment on the ground in Kiev, as you've been expertly reporting all week, has been that people are staying put. They want to stay and fight. Is there also still people in the city who are staying? We're seeing some foot traffic, at least I was a few minutes ago during your last reporter hit. How many people on the
today is a little fluid, but President Biden did say in that statement that he will address the American people after speaking with the G7 nations on the next steps. And obviously, we will learn more about what sanctions will be coming after that first tranche we saw yesterday, which really targeted the sovereign debt, financial institutions, and Russian elites. One thing you may hear more about later today, Todd and Carly, are export controls. Will export controls be added to the package of sanctions? That goes after any country that exports things like computer chips to Russia to try and effectively strangle Putin in his country. Todd and Carly?
That's right. And we're going to be we expect to hear from President Biden at noon Eastern time today as he talks about more sanctions on Russia because of this massive invasion that's unfolding right now. Thank you, Griff. Let's now bring in Rebecca Koffler, who is a U.S. intelligence expert born in Russia. And Rebecca, I'm just looking at a map of Ukraine right now and the explosions that have been heard around the country in Kharkiv, Mariupol, Odessa, and KYIV. That means that there are explosions in the north, east, south, and central Ukraine. Are you surprised by the strategy from Vladimir Putin, and what is his next move?
Oh, I'm absolutely not surprised. This is something that Putin has been planning for the past 20 years. It's part of a larger master plan to ensure that post-Soviet states are returning back under Moscow's control. And so this is what we are seeing right now unfolding is Putin's playbook. What I expect next is massive cyber attacks, electronic warfare, space warfare, air and missile bombardments of key military command and control government targets. And I would not even rule out a decapitation strategy to force Zelensky to flee. That is how Putin operates.
Wow. Putin warned that interference with Russia's invasion would lead to, quote, consequences you have never had in your history. Rebecca, what does he mean by that?
This was clearly a threat that Putin articulated last night in his speech in which he authorized, and I quote, special military operation against, he said, eastern Ukraine. He's basically telegraphing to the United States and NATO to stay out of it. And if they don't, Putin has prepared a 5-point plan in which he would go all the way to a shooting war with the U.S. and NATO, including launching nuclear strikes in Europe. And that is a de-escalatory strategy in Putin's mind. And we knew that in the intelligence community. And unfortunately, our Washington establishment security establishment has not prepared for this, and this is a real tragedy.
Okay, so just to follow up, you are saying that Putin's threat to the U.S. and NATO countries isn't just, I'm going to attack you cyber-wise if you interfere. You say he is threatening actual man-on-man, woman-on-woman, person-on-person combat, correct?
That is absolutely correct. This is exactly what my book is about, Putin's playbook, Russia's secret plan to defeat America. Putin has developed a very sophisticated strategy that the Russians call asymmetric or new generation warfare. And if the Russian intelligence interprets or even misinterprets U.S. and NATO actions as offensive instead of defensive, then Putin can authorize a preemptive doctrine, which includes both kinetic and non-kinetic options.
We're hearing that the EU is going to hit Russia with a sanctions package like they've never seen before. The U.S. is also going to announce additional sanctions. You are saying some pretty scary stuff right now. How can what you're saying be avoided?
Unfortunately, Carly, we're at the 11th hour right now. The sanction policy has been quite foolish and really not grounded in reality. The same people who have been crowing that Russia is a gas station masquerading as a country and the Russian GDP is the size of Italy somehow expect that sanctions are going to stop Putin from executing his master plan that he's been hatching for 2 decades. Well, that's not how it works. The amount sanctioned is minuscule. Russia's GDP is $1.48 trillion. And this is not something that is going to make a difference. And besides, Putin has been sanction-proofing his economy ever since the first sanctions hit Russia back in 2014 after he chopped off Ukraine's Crimea.
Okay, Rebecca, then what does stop Putin at this point?
At this point, unfortunately, short of risking going to war with Putin, I am very I'm very worried to say that nothing will stop him because, again, Putin has been preparing for 2 decades for this, and he's been watching very carefully U.S. operations for the past 2 decades in Iraq, Afghanistan, Kosovo, and they have concluded that every aspect of our warfighting style is highly dependent on technology. And they have developed a strategy that includes cyber and space warfare options that hit exactly at the vulnerabilities of the U.S.
Chilling words.
Yeah, Rebecca Koffler, thank you so much for those warnings. Very important this morning.
Meantime, Putin's aggression creating a ripple effect that is being felt in financial markets worldwide. Dow futures plunging, stocks in Asia and Europe also plummeting, and the Moscow Stock Exchange is suspending trading on all markets until further notice. And while markets drop, crude oil surging to $100 a barrel, that for the first time since 2014.
Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle strongly condemning the actions of Vladimir Putin overnight.
Brooke Singman joins us live now with the details. Brooke.
Hey, good morning. That's right, guys. Lawmakers in our nation's capital are condemning Russia's attack on Ukraine and are calling for a range of new swift, severe, and crippling sanctions. Congressman Dan Crenshaw tweeting, quote, "I hope Vladimir Putin fails and suffers immense losses. This is barbaric behavior, praying that Ukrainians fight like hell and overcome this. May God be with the innocent people of Ukraine." The internet lighting up overnight with Republicans and Democrats alike calling for Putin to be punished. Democrat Senator Chris Murphy tweeting, quote, "Tonight, the entire post-World War international order sits on a knife edge. If Putin does not pay a devastating price for this transgression, then our own security will soon be at risk." And some are placing the blame for the turmoil in Europe squarely on President Biden's shoulders. Listen.
On day one of the Biden presidency, he strengthened Putin. He canceled the Keystone Pipeline. He went forward in the months to come and approved the Nord Stream pipeline. I served on the Armed Services Committee when I was in Congress. I'm very, very clear on what it means to be have peace through strength. And Joe Biden does not understand that because he's never once shown strength when it comes to making decisions to protect this country.
Former President Donald Trump telling Laura Ingraham last night this never would have happened under his leadership. Listen to this.
Some people were saying, why didn't this take place over the last 4 years during our administration? It wouldn't have taken place, and it wouldn't have taken place right now. And it's a very sad thing for the world, for the country, and it's certainly very sad for a lot of people that are going to be needlessly killed.
Now, it remains to be seen what the Biden administration and Congress will do to hold Putin and Russia accountable for this act of war. We'll continue monitoring lawmaker reaction as it rolls in this morning. Carly,
yes, Brooke, we certainly will. Thank you so much. Jason Chaffetz points out the timing of Putin's invasion. Watch this.
All right, that is clearly, obviously, the wrong tape. Let's switch gears here. Do we have the Brett Baer soundbite, guys? Okay, we do not have the prep. We'll get to that in a second. Let's bring in Robert Charles, former Assistant Secretary of State for George W. Bush and former Naval Intel Officer. Robert, we have been talking to you for weeks now about this situation. How does Joe Biden need to respond now?
Well, I think that one thing I would just say right now, the entire Western world, and I would presume led by the United States, but let's just say the entire Western world right now, especially NATO, needs to be responding with both courage and unity. The scary part about this, Todd, and we've talked about this before, is it looks an awful lot like 1938 when Nazi Germany, later to become a horrific source of evil for 4 years and beyond, invaded the Sudetenland. And there were no responses. There were no reactions. It was appeasement from the beginning to the end. And of course, we know that appeasement only encourages more bad behavior. I would just make two basic points. There are some people who will look at this, even with a deep breath in weeks to come, and say, well, it was a limited event. And maybe it was limited. The direct effects could create a huge 43 million person, refugees fleeing. You're already beginning to see that out of Ukraine. It could create additional impacts within Europe. And I'll go to the unlimited or the more dramatic potential readout on this, but just start with the fact that Europe, broader Europe, if we put sanctions on Russia right now, broader Europe gets 30% of their oil and 40% of their natural gas from Russia. There will be an equal and opposite reaction. You can expect gas to start getting turned off across Western Europe by Russia. On the flip side of this, you could say this is the first act of a long play that has a bad ending unless the United States again leads sanctions that stop this right in its tracks. And the reason is this could be the very first act, really, of that Russia-China pact, where China now moves in its sphere of influence. So it's a perilous moment, one in which both courage and unity, I think, are critical. Understanding history is critical. Understanding that overreaction is almost as bad as underreaction. And so you've got to get the balance just right. And you've got to send a message to Russia that this is not only inappropriate and has to stop, but that any expansion of this will be hit directly. I'd like to think we don't talk kinetic. I'd like to think we're talking sanctions and economic. But this is a failure of diplomacy, straight up. And I think if we had been more direct and consistent 8-9 months ago, the buildup would have slowly retreated. We wouldn't be where we are, but we are where we are.
Yeah, Brett Baer was on our air a few hours ago, and he summed up what this moment means for the world moving forward. Listen to this.
Putin has a vision. He has a vision for not only taking over the Soviet Union map, but also rejiggering the world order, where he and perhaps Chinese President Xi Jinping shake things up. We'll see if the U.S. and other allies stand up to that.
Yeah, that's right. This was planned. This was calculated. This has been Vladimir Putin's life mission since he was a KGB operative and saw the Soviet Union fall. Now he is allied with Chinese President Xi Jinping. How critical is their alliance to what they want to do moving forward, which is, redraw the lines of Europe?
To be quite honest, Carly, I think they want to do more than redraw the lines of Europe. This is an epic, sort of a titanic battle between two ideologies, the communist in China, communist China, and the sort of legacy communism of Putin's KGB Russia versus freedom, free markets, the idea that there is such a thing as a Western world order, that there is such a thing as hard natural law rights that we call human rights, that the ideas that are in our Bill of Rights, from freedom of speech and self-defense and not being held captive and all that, are really worth fighting for versus this other, essentially this other repressive ideology. So it's not just a battle for territory. It's a battle of ideas. And I think this is the opening round in the test to see, in Europe at least, whether there's pushback enough collectively in a unified way that says, no, we believe in these values enough that we will put down the differences between us. We will suffer some losses if we have to get counter sanctions when we sanction. We will stand up to this kind of aggression. And incidentally, we will stand up to it in the Far East as well. It's a critical moment because it really tests the resolve or the mettle, M-E-T-T-L-E, of the Western world.
Robert, one of the reasons we love to go to you is because you give us that inside chatter that's coming from that national security inner circle. At this point, among those individuals, yourself included, what is the greatest concern for the United States national security stemming from this invasion? Is it just cyber at this point, or, I don't know if you heard our last guest, Rebecca Koffler, is it something more severe than just cyber at this point?
You know, I think that, remember that moments of crisis and storms always call up the worst reactions in us emotionally. They cause us to think the worst. And I don't think Russia has the intent of launching an ICBM or even using tactical nuclear weapons. I think I did hear that report. I think it's certainly sobering that it's within the 1% range of possibilities, but I don't think it's the likely outcome. I do think, however, we live in a world today that is different. This will be the largest conflict probably in Europe since 1945. We do live in a world in which things are so tightly connected now that sanctions reverberate back on us. Any kinetic act reverberates back on us. Any cyber attack both ways will, behind the curtain, reverberate through the economies of all countries affected. So I think you have to just remember that this is actually a time when true diplomatic leadership continues to be vital. A collective world reaction to this that says, we're not going to let this go further. You are going to pay a price for this economically, and yes, you provide oil, but you will pay a price for this. If that is sober and civil and in a way is believable and credible, as Biden has not been credible in Afghanistan and other places, then all of a sudden Russia will say, and China will say, by the way, at the same time, no, we're not going to go deeper into this. This is going to be mud and mire, and we're going to get hammered if we go, so we'll stop.
Yeah,
but if you don't do that, you get appeasement.
Yeah, certainly do. And, you know, Robert, something very unique happened yesterday. There is usually no agreement in Washington, but on this topic there was. Lawmakers from the squad on the left or the Freedom Caucus on the right, they all called on President Biden to get congressional approval before stationing U.S. troops in Ukraine, which would be an obvious step for the president to do. The president also has been very clear. No, we do not want to fight. We do not want to fight with Russia, our troops to fight Russian soldiers. What is the possibility of that happening?
Well, let me say, to join, it's hard to find a day in the calendar year when I would ever, agree with any of the folks on the far left. But let me say I agree with Biden's decision here, because Ukraine is not a NATO ally. Ukraine does not. We should not be putting offensive troops in there. We should not be putting defensive troops in there. We should probably not be putting offensive weapons in there. We should only be putting defensive weapons in there. However, troops in Latvia and American troops on the ground in Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, any Western or Eastern European country that is part of NATO is absolutely the right thing to do, because that puts a very clear line on the ground. So I think we're at a moment again where unity and courage are the driving forces, what we really need. And with unity and courage, you can stop this forest fire. Without it, the forest fire spreads.
Yeah, that's right. And President Biden did announce more troops to Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia earlier this week. And the goal there was to assure our NATO allies that our presence is there with them, and also to bring U.S. troops closer to Russia, which is something that Vladimir Putin doesn't want to see. Robert, we got to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Now, Russia claims to have disabled Ukraine's air defense overnight, but the people of Ukraine are not giving in to Putin, and they're fighting to save their country. We're going to be talking to one of them coming up.
And we are also talking to Medal of Honor recipient Dakota Meyer. As our breaking news coverage continues, do not go anywhere.
Do you struggle to fall asleep and stay asleep? Qunol Sleep Formula combines 5 key nutrients that can help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up refreshed. The brand I trust is Qunol.
Jewelry, the perfect gift. While many jewelers are short on stock, the Jewelry Exchange makes their own and has everything. Diamond bands, just $149. 1-carat hoops, $5.99. Tennis bracelets, $4.99. And 1-carat studs, $5.99. Buy factory direct and save. The Jewelry Exchange.
Why do nearly 1 million businesses choose Stamps.com to mail and ship? No more trips to the post office. No more paying full price for postage. And great rates from USPS and UPS. Mail letters. Ship packages. Anytime, anywhere. For less. A lot less. Get our special TV offer, a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to stamps.com/TV and never go to the post office again.
Change, an invigorating, terrifying, powerful force. Our bodies are incredible, but with menopause, I needed a change. That's when I found Bonafide, naturally powerful remedies clinically shown to relieve hot flashes, night sweats, and dryness. Bonafide is dedicated to providing women with naturally powerful, scientifically validated solutions that truly work, with no drugs and no hormones, just real relief. The truth is, millions of women suffer the way I used to every day, because change comes for us all. You are not alone. See why more than 8,000 OBGYN doctors recommend Bonafide products to their patients. Because it works. Get back to your best life. There's no prescription required, and they'll ship right to your home. Order now, and you'll save 20% off your first month's subscription and get free shipping. Just use code TV42. Embrace your change. There is a solution. Find it at hellobonafide.com.
Celebrate Black History Month with Fox News. Hear the inspiring stories we've shared in the past and meet the new heroes of today. America Together, celebrating diversity on Fox News Channel.
Do you listen to the TV on high volume or have trouble hearing conversations? Then you would benefit from hearing aids. Don't waste thousands on expensive hearing aids when you can get Nano's revolutionary technology for just $297. Don't be fooled by higher-priced hearing aids. The CIC Recharge is a true hearing aid, not an amplifier. With rechargeable technology many customers say is superior to more expensive models. Call now and get not one, but 2 Nano hearing aids for just $297. Plus, we'll add a portable charging case and ship your order absolutely free. The CIC Recharge has a tiny in-the-ear canal design that is nearly invisible. Why keep missing out on important conversations or waste thousands of dollars? Call and get 2 CIC Recharge hearing aids for only $297 and free shipping.
800-325-4991. Again, that's 800-325-4991.
I love Made In. I love what Made In represents. With the product, you could tell that there's extreme craftsmanship.
You would think a pan is a pan until Made In came along, and I went, wow, these things are something better.
I use Made In both at home and here at Craft in New York City. They're beautifully made and will help you take your cooking to the next level.
Those are the pans that we use at Alinea. We're going to have the best pans in the world at one of the best restaurants in the world.
Russian troops launching a wide-ranging attack on Ukraine, with Russian President Putin warning to West to stay out of it or face unprecedented consequences. A member of Ukraine's parliament broke down the current situation in Kyiv earlier this morning.
There are explosions around the city. Our military infrastructure, airports are bombed. And it's not only about Kiev, it's Odessa, Kharkiv, Mariupol. It's the big cities of the country and smaller cities too. So we have a full-scale attack on Ukraine using heavy artillery and aviation and rockets.
Joining us now, Dakota Meyer, Marine veteran and Medal of Honor recipient. Dakota, great to see you. Look, out of all of our guests today, you are the war-fighting expert. Run us through the range of fighting that you expect to see in this conflict so far.
Well, first off, I want to say that I've been coming on here the last couple of weeks, and I was completely wrong. Like, I never thought that they were going to invade. I mean, maybe I was just being optimistic. You know, this is not what we want to see. I mean, I look at, I think the scariest part is we watch Vladimir Putin, his warning to us, and you know, I heard a couple people talking about that. You know, they don't think that nuclear is on the table. Well, what I seen is a man talking about those consequences, and he was insinuating that there was nothing that wasn't on the table. And that's what's scary for all of us, right?
Yeah, I know, without a doubt. And, you know, you look at also something else that's scary. You look at the military head-to-head. Russia's active personnel, 900,000. In Ukraine, 200,000. Reserve personnel, 2 million. Russian troops, 900,000 Ukrainian. Artillery, 4,600 for Russia, 1,800 for Ukraine. You know, Ukraine is obviously getting support from the United States and West in terms of shipments of weapons. But when you hear those numbers, does Ukraine stand a chance?
I mean, look, I don't think that Ukraine stands a chance at all. And then, you got to also talk about that inside of Ukraine, how many Russian supporters are there within Ukraine, right? I mean, I don't think Ukraine stands a chance, but I think at this point that the world needs to be asking the question of, well, does Putin stop at Ukraine, right? I mean, that's really the only question that I have. First off, I don't think that there's any way that we should be going and getting into a conflict, and we should not have our troops fighting theirs. It's time for Europe to step up and head this on. Obviously, any of the NATO countries, if he threatens those, and the United States has got to back that, and not being the leader of that, but obviously we need to lead with the sanctions, but I think the sleeping part of this and the even bigger part of this that we need to watch is what is China going to do now, right? Like, is China going to go ahead and take this opportunity to take over Taiwan?
I mean, that's a question that obviously flows from this, and it is
China
a frightening question.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned your mindset as to what should the U.S. involvement be. Is that, would you say, the assessment of the average American soldier at this point, that we should not be over there fighting?
Well, I mean, look, I think that we've all had enough of war the last 20 years of with no plan or with no designated, what does a win look like, right? I think I'll say personally, I don't want to go into another country again and leave it worse than we found it. So what would the plan be? How would we go over and keep Russia from coming into to Ukraine? I mean, look, the Taliban waited us out after 20 years, and then as soon as we left, they went back in and took over the country that we'd spent, billions of dollars in. So I think that the best case scenario here is that we put sanctions on Russia and keep them from going any further than this. But I do believe that none of us want to go over and put our troops against their troops in this, because I don't think this is their fight.
Yeah, well, President Biden is going to be speaking later today to address Americans directly as Russia launches all-out war in Ukraine to create a regime change. What do you hope to hear him say?
Honestly, I hope that our leaders in this country unite, right? Right now is not the time to be political. Right now is the time for leaders to step up and lead. It's not about armchair quarterbacking. I don't think that it's a coincidence that, this administration, how they pulled out of Afghanistan, the level of incompetency that this administration has shown has been astronomical. If I was the United States enemy, right now would be the time that I would act. And that's what you're starting to see. You're starting to see Russia act. Next, you're going to see China act. The ripple effect of this is going to be felt across the globe. So, my hope is that our military leaders that are leaders that are up there in Washington, D.C., that they can all put their politics aside. They can stop getting political. They can unite. They can unite with Europe. They can unite with all of our partners across the globe to go ahead and put a stop to this, and we can act on a united front to show Russia that Russia's not, they go past Ukraine, they're not going to just face these other countries. They're going to be facing the wrath of the world, and I don't think that Russia wants that.
Yeah, your assessment on the lack of U.S. leadership and, quite frankly, lack of U.S. strength on the world stage is both chilling and something that we have been warning about for weeks, if not months now. Dakota Meyer, we appreciate your time and insight this morning. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Dakota.
Thank you.
Ukrainian President Zelensky just spoke to his moments ago. Steve Harrigan is live on the ground in Kyiv. Steve, what's the latest?
It was a brief, live, but emotional address by the president of Ukraine. He basically spoke directly to Russians and appealed to them to not back President Putin, saying Putin is on a path of evil. He said what Russia's doing right now is an attempt to destroy a democratic state. He also said that people who are going to stay should stay here and fight. He said this government will arm Ukrainians, will give them weapons, fight them in your towns, fight them in your cities, fight them in the squares. An emotional call to arms, this government ready to arm civilians to fight against the Russian army. Also asking for blood donations as well as a sign of more bloodshed to come, Carly.
Tough words. Tough words. Steve Harrigan, thank you. In the face of the Russian invasion, many Ukrainians are staying put despite the danger. Yurima Du, one of them, joining us now from Kyiv. Yurima, thanks so much for being here, of course, under these horrific circumstances. What's the feeling among those on the ground right now?
Well, thank you for having me today. I would say that we are angry and we are resolute. I mean, that's not a surprise for us because this is exactly 8 years anniversary we are marking these days when Russian troops landed on the south of our country, on Crimean Peninsula. So we tried to prepare for 8 years. And now, from what I see from our official sources, Russians are taking heavy losses on all directions that they headed to Ukraine. So, well, I see my neighborhood from the window, so there is no panic. I mean, there's a lot of cars parked on the parking lots as usual. I mean, I've been to the market in the morning. There are some queues, but there are a lot of goods on the shelves. So everybody who willing to buy something can do it, and just only to wait in some queues. So I think that we are ready to fight back, and we are fighting back. Our army and armed forces are prepared, and they just doing their job.
Yeah, and on that note, your president, Vladimir Zelensky, he posted something on Instagram, and one of the messages that he sent to the Ukrainian people is, don't panic, we are strong, we will win because we are Ukraine, glory to Ukraine. And I'm wondering if Vladimir Putin could be underestimating the will of the Ukrainian people. And if so, could an invasion in Ukraine end up being a mistake in the end?
It is mistake now. It is mistake for 8 years already. And invading neighboring Georgia in 2008 also was a mistake for Russia. But nowadays, they will get the response they deserve. Because on one hand, for instance, your producer showed me footage of Fox News. You showing people leaving Kyiv because I can understand them because I don't have kids. But if I would have kids, I also flew the city and tried to find a shelter somewhere on the countryside. But what you didn't probably know that within past few days, Ukrainians donated tens of millions to volunteer funds who are working with army and who are buying goods for army, namely Повернись живим, Sergei Pritula, getting tens of millions of hryvnias every day on their bank accounts. Yeah. One of Ukrainian volunteer fund is #1 on Patreon worldwide with the donations they are getting from Ukrainians and from supporters of Ukraine from abroad. So we are super prepared. For instance, a day before, Ukrainian government issued a brochure which is named how to deal in a time of crisis and war, which is explaining online in Telegram chatbots, on other sources, how to deal and how to be prepared and what to do under all the circumstances. So we are not fighting Russians only on the land, we are fighting them on information ground. And, you know, to paraphrase one British politician, we will find them on the land, we will fight them in the air, and we will fight them on Twitter because it's 2022.
Yeah, a pretty famous British politician, I might add, one Winston Churchill, although obviously they didn't have Twitter back then, but if they did, that would have applied. To your point of everybody fighting, we have seen reports, Yurima, of grandmothers saying, I've never fired a gun before, but I'm willing to take up arms to defend my homeland. Is that the general sentiment? And quite frankly, Yurima, are you willing to do the same?
Well, I would say that those who are capable fighting back should do that. And everybody should have their place where they can do the best the country needs. For me, I'm being a political consultant, and I'm stopping or pausing my contracts where I can, and I'm joining the government to volunteer for the government in the media relations and all other fields. So I think I will be the most effective there. I have friends who joined the military and joining the military. So those graphics that you showed previously with comparative analysis on Ukrainian and Russian forces, should be rewrite very soon. Because firstly, Russian forces are disposed on the whole territory of their huge country. And secondly, they are getting losses. For instance, you can cut out at least 6 planes from that chart because they got them down by Ukrainian forces this morning.
Yurima, we're running out of time, but quickly, I want to just ask you one question, because Russia is claiming a lot of things this morning, and one of them is that they knocked out all of Ukraine's air defenses. Do you know if this is true?
Well, this is not true, because if they would do that, how possibly we would knock down their planes? And we are doing this across the whole country.
All right. Okay, Yurima, stay safe. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. All right, Russia also waging cyber warfare on Ukraine, targeting key government websites, and top members of Congress are worried that could drag the U.S. into the conflict, even if we don't put boots on the ground.
Security expert Jim Hansen, live next.
I'm Farad Murad, Nobel Prize winner in medicine. Many people don't realize that memory and our ability to focus are directly tied to healthy blood flow to our brain. I know because I've spent much of my career understanding the mechanisms of blood flow in the human body. And the science is clear. Our brains use roughly 20% of our body's blood supply to power key functions like memory. Cerebral blood flow is very, very important. The better the blood flow, the better your brain health. So by supporting healthy blood flow, you're helping to support memory.
Introducing SuperBeets' new Memory and Focus Chews, the brain health support chew that makes doing more to support your memory both simple and convenient. Their unique, clinically studied ingredients are shown to help support healthy neuroprotein levels while also promoting healthy blood flow to your brain.
Supporting my brain health is so important to me as I get older. I feel I have so much more work still to do. And that's why I recommend these chews to anyone who wants to do more to support their brain health. They're a soy-free, decaffeinated way of getting the antioxidants I need to support my memory, and they help me stay sharp and keep at the top of my game. They're delicious, and most importantly, they work.
Call now to learn how you can get a free 30-day supply of SuperBeets Memory and Focus Chews with your first order. And for a limited time, we'll send you a free 30 days of our top-selling SuperBeets Heart Chews. We'll even include free shipping, free returns, plus a full money-back guarantee. That's over $30 in free gifts. So try SuperBeets Memory and Focus Chews today. Love your results or your money back.
I always tell people it's never too late or too early to start supporting your brain health. I'm Farad Murad, Nobel Prize winner in medicine, and my memory is powered by SuperBeets.
To get this special offer, visit trysuperbeets.com/memory or call 1-800-948-2047. That's 1-800-948-2047.
All eyes on Russia as Vladimir Putin's next move looms over Ukraine and the world braces for war. Neil gets insight on the latest developments tomorrow on Your World.
Non-attorney spokesperson. This is a paid advertisement for legal services sponsored by Nightline Legal. Cases assigned on a random basis to participating law firms.
Attention military personnel. If you or a loved one served in the military between 2002 to 2016 and later experienced hearing loss or tinnitus, call right now. You may be entitled to financial compensation. Call now to find out if you qualify. Call Nightline Legal to speak with an experienced attorney for a free consultation.
Call 800-504-5707.
Ladies, we all know men don't like to ask for help, whether it's asking for directions or taking care of themselves. So if your guy is over 40 and not feeling like the man he used to be, he may need your help. Give him a complimentary sample of Nugenix Total T, the award-winning #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. Just text RICH to 231-231 now. As men age, they have less and less free testosterone, and that can make it harder to stay in shape. Nugenix Total T is powered by Testofen, a patented key ingredient clinically validated to boost free and total testosterone levels to help your man feel leaner, stronger, with more energy and drive, more passion too. Nugenix is available at fine retailers, but you can only get his complimentary sample by texting RICH to 231-231. Text now and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, our most powerful fat incinerator ever. That's RICH to 231-231. The results will speak for themselves.
A Fox News alert, Putin's aggression creating a ripple effect that's being felt in financial markets worldwide. Dow futures plunging, stocks in Asia and Europe also plummeting, and the Moscow Stock Exchange is suspending trading on all markets until further notice. And while markets drop, crude oil was surging to $100 a barrel for the first time since 2014.
Meantime, cyber attacks believed to be a key weapon in the Russian siege of Ukraine, and some fear they could trigger a larger escalation.
Jim Hansen, president of the Security Studies Group and U.S. Army Special Forces veteran, joins us now. One of the major concerns, Jim, here at home is that this Russia conflict with Ukraine could spill over in the terms of cyber warfare in the United States. If that happens, what does it look like?
Well, that's just the problem. We've been whistling past the graveyard on cybersecurity for a long time, based on the assumption no one wants to try something like that against us. We also never thought anyone would be rolling tanks through Europe again during the modern times. Putin's doing that right now because he has no fear of deterrence from the Biden administration or repercussions that worry him. That's the same problem that leads him to believe perhaps cyber attacks against us would not be a problem either. I think he's wrong there. I don't think there's any chance that we would not respond to cyber attacks, not with kinetic action, but we have very strong capabilities there too. So I don't think that's something Putin really wants to do to us.
Okay, building upon that, Putin has warned that anyone who interferes with this invasion will fear the wrath of consequences, the likes of which they have never seen. Are you thinking that is confined just to the cyberspace, or could that mean something else, something far, far worse?
I think that is a not particularly veiled threat to use nuclear weapons. I don't think Putin wants to use nuclear weapons. I don't think he will use nuclear weapons. But the fact that he's willing to publicly threaten anyone who would consider intervening in this shows that he has no fear at all of the Americans or NATO, who are both irrelevant, to stopping him from what he's doing in Ukraine. Putin will go as far in Ukraine as he wants to. If he wants to take the whole country, there's really nothing stopping him. The Ukrainians, unfortunately, can't stop him militarily. Now, if he happened to take all of Ukraine and topple the government, he's going to have one incredible insurgency against him that I think will make him remember Afghanistan and how the Russians left there like we did without being able to control the country. But I think right now he knows that he can take the whole country, and if he just wants the Russian portions of that, if he wants the breakaway provinces, he can keep those a lot more easily. So this may be a push to use the whole of Ukraine as a bargaining chip.
All right. Well, there is a tweet from DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas on the cyber warfare front. He says, we have no information to suggest a specific credible cyber threat against the U.S. homeland, but it is our responsibility to be prepared. And that's what we do at DHS, #Shields Up. But you talked to other people like Rick Perry, who was on Fox and Friends recently, and he said that that's not true and that there are always cyber threats from Russia to the United States. So who do we believe on this front? We do have to think back to the Colonial Pipeline hack and how detrimental that was to the United States. And I think there's a lot of people in this country that are concerned that something like that might happen again, considering this aggression that we're seeing from Russia.
And the difficulty with cyber attacks is it's very difficult to go ahead and follow cyber forensically who caused the attack, who actually initiated the attack. And in this case, if Russia did it, they would use a lot of cutouts and it would not happen from their territory. We also have to wonder whether the Chinese may conduct some kind of cyber attack to distract us as they consider the idea of rolling ships across the Formosa Strait and taking Taiwan. So we'd have to look at both of them as potential actors in any cyber attack, whether to distract us from what's going on in Ukraine currently or a potential operation against Taiwan. And we're not prepared to stop either one of those because there's just way too many places you can attack U.S. infrastructure, financial markets, and other things. We simply can't stop a cyber attack, but we could respond to one.
Putin has wanted to do this for decades. Begs the question, why now? President Trump weighing in. Listen.
I always heard that the worst thing that could happen is if you drive those two countries together. And it really started with Obama and energy. He drove them together because One needed the energy and the other one needed the money. He drove them together, and Biden put them. I kept them apart. And Biden, now it looks like it's a great love fest, and that's a very bad thing for the fact. And I think you could probably add Iran into it, too, because they're including Iran also.
Your reaction, Jim?
President Trump's exactly right. The left like to claim that he was Putin's puppet and somehow was enabling bad actions by Putin. And yet, nothing bad happened during President Trump's term. The same with the Chinese. He engaged Putin to keep him out of this new Dragon Bear alliance, which is considerably more dangerous than anything we've faced since the days of the Cold War. So they didn't act when Trump was president, yet as soon as Biden came in and they were facing a much lesser adversary who they were relatively sure would not act against them in an aggressive way, they went ahead and took advantage of that. And the fear again is now that with them meeting during the Olympics and acting together, they may be the ones we have to fear.
Yeah, and you're talking about peace through strength, which is a very important concept. Jim, thank you so much for waking up early on this very important day. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
All right, we are following every breaking detail out of Ukraine all morning long, including live reports from Kyiv, where Ukrainians are waking up to explosions and war.
Plus, Dr. Rebecca Grant, Congressman Michael Waltz, and Mark Green all here live. Please don't go anywhere.
The new GMC Sierra with hands-free driving offers the most advanced and luxurious pickup in its class. Yeah, it rocks.
I'm Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas and 2016 presidential candidate. Like many of you, I've struggled to get a good night's sleep for most of my adult life. I wasted at least 2 hours a day of my life tossing and turning, trying to shut my mind down. Until about 2 years ago, that's when I saw an ad on TV for Relaxium Sleep. I decided to order it, and it literally changed my life. Developed by renowned neurologist and sleep expert Dr. Eric Ciliberti, Relaxium Sleep is clinically proven to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. Relaxium's exclusive triple action formula addresses 3 key factors that contribute to insomnia. I like that it's non-habit forming. It's made in the USA. There's simply nothing else like it. Relaxium Sleep comes with a 100% money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. In fact, they're so confident it'll work for you, they're giving away 1,000 bottles today. With Relaxium Sleep, I fall asleep as soon as my head hits the pillow. In the morning, my mind is sharp, and I've got energy that I enjoyed when I was younger. Both my wife and I have been paying customers of Relaxium Sleep for over 2 years now. And I know once you've experienced the amazing difference it can make in your life, you will be too. I trust my night to Relaxium Sleep. And so should you. Try Relaxium Sleep risk-free for 30 days. Use the promo code on your screen for free expedited shipping.
Call 800-417-3773 or visit tryrelaxium.com. That's 800-417-3773 or visit tryrelaxium.com. Fall asleep, stay asleep, wake refreshed with clinically proven Relaxium Sleep. Act now.
You'll be glad you did.
Trust United Relaxium Sleep.
These folks don't have time to go to the post office. They use Stamps.com. All the services of the post office, only cheaper. Get a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to Stamps.com/TV and never go to the post office again.
Selling a home is expensive and stressful, so we created our smart seller system to sell your home for top dollar and save you thousands in commissions.
I was amazed in the fact that my house sold in 1 day. Ideal agents saved me in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $25,000 in commission. The process was as easy as it gets. They are the #1 way to sell your house.
Our service is free, available nationwide, and there's 0 obligation. Call us today or visit idealagent.com.
As someone with hearing loss, I know what a confusing and frustrating experience getting hearing aids can be. That's why I founded Lively. High-quality hearing aids with all of the features you need and none of the hassle. Lively offers Bluetooth FDA-regulated hearing aids delivered to your door for thousands less than you'd expect, and remote access to an audiology team 7 days a week. Better hearing has never been this easy. Try Lively risk-free for 100 days. Visit listenlively.com.
State of the Union 2022. Watch as President Biden addresses the challenges facing the nation and sets the course for the future of our country. Brett and Martha anchor and get critical insight from our panel of experts. Don't miss our special State of the Union coverage Tuesday on Fox News Channel.
An all-out war is on in Europe as Ukrainians wake up to air raid sirens, explosions, and gunfire. Russian tanks entering the country from all sides as President Putin warns the West to stay out of his way or face, quote, consequences you have never had before in your history.
People on the ground in Ukraine's capital city crowding highways to a complete stop as they desperately rush to evacuate. See the lights right there on your screen. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Thursday morning. I am Todd Pyro.
And I'm Carly Shimkus. We're following this breaking news on all fronts. Congressman Michael Waltz joins us with live reaction in just moments. Griff Jenkins is in Washington, where President Biden is set to speak this morning.
But first, we turn to Steve Harrigan, live on the ground in Kyiv. Steve, what's the latest?
Todd, whoa. Large explosion 2 miles behind me. Black smoke coming up. Any idea what that was?
Missile, yeah.
Probably a missile. We've heard reports that Russia at least says they're using precision-guided missiles. We've heard a large number of strikes in the pre-dawn hours. For the last hour or so, it's been quieter. Can you come out here and show that smoke? We're going to try and show you the gray smoke coming up. Just bear with us. This is live TV, and we're trying to move a camera. Thanks, Dallas. So you can see, eventually in the distance, you're going to see that black smoke coming up. We don't know what was hit, but